I'm just going to look and go, guys. TexAgs Radio Rewind. I add the radio to the rewind sometimes. Sometimes I take it out, but it is presented by T-Mobile because we love T-Mobile, and they want to remind you to visit T-Mobile.com/acrossamerica to learn more, as I slow down my speaking, about how you can get value and coverage with T-Mobile. Big time show. Aggie basketball. They've been fun to watch. Watched them last night, and hopefully a lot of you did, and see how good this team is. They're 3-0 in SEC play. We had to break down that game. Chris Landry came on to talk about the national championship game. We talked a little bit about the Aggies in particular moving forward and what kind of recruiting classes can translate to this kind of national championship. Mike Lucas came in to talk a little bit hoops, as my buddy Dalton calls him, Jersey Mike. He was at the game last night as well, chatted with him. And recruiting country with the guy who loves to do bench press and also is going to probably do a Tough Mudder at some point, Ryan Broniger. It is TexAgs Rewind presented by T-Mobile. But, OB, you were there. It was close at times, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, I thought A&M was in control of the game almost the entire game. You mentioned Henry Coleman. He was exceptional, especially in the first half. And I thought it was funny. Buzz Williams came out in the post-game presser, and he was saying that, we were okay in the first half, but he really wasn't happy with the energy and intensity. And yet they shot like something like 60%.
Yeah, they were shooting well,
in the first half, and a lot of that was getting the ball inside. A lot of backdoor plays for layups on the baseline. So I think they dominated in the paint, which usually don't count on. Didn't shoot free throws well, but when you only shoot 7, but I think for the most what they did, especially in the second half. Just played really, really good defense, as you would expect, but only gave up, according to the stats, 3 second-chance points, and that's been an area where they've had a lot of trouble.
Now, they did lose the offensive rebounding total, if I remember the numbers correctly, but they won the rebounding edge, and Henry Coleman, a huge part of that.
But the offensive rebound that you give up, you don't want to give up any, but when your opponent's not turning them into points,
right?
What's the big deal?
Not that big of a deal. No. This is one of those games that we can nitpick, but they played very well, and they played differently. Like, if you talk about how this team beats teams offensively, it's with the 3-ball.
3-ball
and defense.
And more, making points off defense and just making sure you get more shots than your opponent.
But yesterday, while points off in transition were all a part of it, they were really good in the paint. Very good in the paint.
Right. I think they outscored them something like 42-24 in the paint.
42-24, yep.
Which is why they shot such a high percentage. They were doing a good job driving inside, and the guards dishing. I think Marcus Williams had 8 assists. They shared the ball a lot. So, they played, I think, their best basketball game of the season. And, maybe it's just a matter of everybody figuring it out, their role, and getting comfortable in it. But they showed that they don't have to go out and hit, 10-plus three-pointers to win a game.
But the fact that they can and do very often now makes opponents who are scouting them, getting ready for them, who are playing them, have to defend the 3-ball, which allows a little bit more fluidity when you're attacking the basket.
Yeah.
Tell you what, man, for Georgia, does this mean that this is the beginning of their run? Or does this mean we're going to see a lot more Bama Georgia? We've seen it, but just Georgia wasn't able to get over the top. But is this the beginning of their dominance?
Well, Georgia's had a program that's on an elite level. This is not like an LSU in 2019 where it was so obvious to those of us that work in football that was not likely going to be sustainable. Georgia's sustained it. They've had an elite program, and they've gotten a lot of criticism, and a lot of it's going to go away now for not winning it. Well, the problem is when anybody compared against Alabama falls up short in terms of, they win most of the time. So if you're going to criticize folks for not being as good as Alabama consistently, well, criticize everybody because no one is at that level. consistency is the key. I'm always more impressed by somebody that consistently is there, because you can't win it unless you're in it. You can't win a big game, lose 3 games. You can't have a great year, go 8-4, 7-5. That to me is not consistently good. That's not as impressive and I think that's where Georgia is. It doesn't mean that they can't lose a game. I mean, you can lose a game during the course of the year, but you look at Georgia now and you think, and this has something to do with the East of the SEC, but overall, you look at them and you think Georgia might not lose but 1 game most every year now. I think they're at that point. The other thing is recruiting. Talk about recruit. Georgia, what's impressive is that Georgia's done it every year for a long period. So that's where that talent level comes up. If you don't recruit at that highest level every year, you're going to have some inconsistencies within your program. So Georgia is already there. This just kind of puts the cherry on the top and says, because we're in a what have you done yesterday or today mold, they're there. Does it mean that they're going to win 3 out of the next 5 national titles? I don't think anybody's going to do that. I mean, I just don't think but I think they're going to be in the position to do that year in and year out. And I do think it's Georgia and Alabama until they come back to the pack, because they are so far ahead in terms of what they do on a consistent level that it's going to be quite the challenge to beat them. And they're the Alabama of the SEC East. So that's the unique thing. The interesting thing about it for the younger members of the audience is, because it's become a quite the rival, rivalries kind of, but you go back, Georgia and Alabama in the old SEC days when I was coaching in the SEC 10-team league, they never played each other. You go like Herschel and Buck Blue and those guys, they never played Alabama because you didn't have a conference championship game and you didn't play them across the way. So, yeah, I think it's going to be them for the foreseeable future unless you have an odd year.
He's the most intense guy in the court. There's 10 players on the court and there's, 20 guys on the bench between both teams. Buzz is the most energetic, loudest dude on the court. He jumps nonstop. He's shouting, calling out screens, calling out picks. Tyrese Radford said on the road, they feed off the energy from the 12th man at Reed Arena. On the road, they have to bring their own energy. And Buzz Williams is part of that. He is the most energetic coach I've ever seen. We've had John Calipari come through here. You've had Brick Barnes, all the SEC coaches. No one moves around like Buzz. That's his own unique style. And to kind of sit there and, while you're shooting the game or watching the game and he's 15 feet in your left ear and the camera's on your right side, you see the game and you hear Buzz. And the crowd's an ambient noise in the background, the squeak of the floor with the sneakers. That's just ambient noise in the background. Buzz is, in his own right, worth the price of admission. If you could just watch him coach, take the game out of the equation, it's probably a $7 ticket.
So, do we know who this team is now? Like, we've said that. What are they, 14-2? There's 3-0 in the SEC. They've won games different ways. They've given up leads, but they've learned how to finish those games. They've had a game now that do we know them when it forecasted the rest of SEC play?
No, I don't. And I don't think you have to know necessarily what this team is yet because it is still so young. Buzz mentioned it last night. They're like 294th in the country in average age, and they're like 275th in the country in games played in Power 5 conferences. So it's a young team that's still learning. And I think part of the reason we've seen them blow leads is they haven't learned how to win yet.
Right.
And they're learning how to win. And they're learning how to sustain runs. We saw last night, Ole Miss cut it down 39-37. It's going to happen again, right?
Right.
Wrong. Instead of letting Ole Miss go on that run, A&M went on a 13-1 run after that, extended the lead to 14, and Ole Miss never got back in the game. So I don't know if this team has an identity yet. We've seen them score inside last night. We've seen them score from beyond the arc. We've seen them win defensive games. They held Ole Miss to 51 last night. It's an incredible defensive effort. And as this team continues to kind of go through the fire, learn who they are, learn which lineups play best together, because Buzz played 12 guys in the first half last night. Do you know how crazy that is? I was the 11th guy on a bench in college. I played like 4 games all season.
Right.
He played 12 guys in the first half in an SEC game. That's absurd. So as they continue to kind of figure out which lineups work best together, who can best deliver the ball to certain guys in certain spots, who's making shots that day, who's not, I think they're still kind of developing their identity. But the one thing we do know, they're going to play hard. And that is maybe one quality that can overcome an off shooting night, a poor defensive night, is just that consistent effort that we always see from a Buzz Williams team.
I do want to talk a little bit about something that Chris Landry brought up. So I asked him earlier about the difference between being the number one and other schools and what it means long-term with A&M closing the gap with the Bamas and the Georgias, right? And he talked about the difference is not necessarily the rankings, it's the points that you are accumulating by the type of talent you're getting. And Dalton made a wonderful graphic there, just the difference between what 1 and 5 is, how big of a difference it is. And, A&M's had some, an 8, a 3,
4,
a 4. Yeah. So you look at the Texas difference between A&M, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah, there's levels of this, right? Like Texas has a really good class, and they should be very excited about it. By the way, nobody wants to talk about a 5-7 team with a loss to Kansas and a 6-game losing streak, blowing double-digit leads. Nobody wants to talk about that team getting in the top 5 about recruiting, right? They all want to talk about an 8-4 team with a head coach that's won a national championship and has recruited in the top 10, top 5 his entire career. They want to talk about that team getting number 1 overall. But everybody wants to overlook that number 5 right there. Which one makes more sense? Also, a number 5 team that's got a head coach who's 51-42 overall, been fired twice. There's levels of this thing. You know what I'm saying, Nuno? So Texas at 5 is actually closer to whoever knows numbers at number 16 than they are Texas A&M. Pull that graphic. Oh, there's the graphic right there. So there's 45 recruiting points between A&M and Texas. Now, one of the things that I don't ever understand is how to assign numbers to kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, how is that all
opinion?
Yeah, it's all formulated in opinion, but it does show you that there is still a wide gap between the number 1 class and number 5 class. And look, we've gone over this 1,000 times. You have to recruit at that level to be playing in the games that Bama and Georgia were playing in the other night.
Well, that'll do it here for the show. Thanks so much for watching. Like it, comment on it, subscribe to it, do all the good stuff, share it, tell your uncle about it. I want you to tell your grandmother about it.
First one to comment Munoz gets a high five.
Okay, if you do Munoz, you're banned from the show. That's a fact. And now Dalton is banned from talking on the show. You got to go, Dalton. Thanks so much for watching.